I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, who's Dawn Bailey from Oregon Tech. She is the Practicum Coordinator and Clinical Director of Humanities and Social Sciences. Her talk is titled Active Student Responding.
All right, so a little bit about myself. This is really loud. Let's not do that. Is that okay? Is that better? Okay, all right, so I've been teaching for about 18 years in undergraduate and graduate classes, and also, concurrently, have been in charge of academic and curricular decisions for kids with emotional and behavior disorders and autism in their classrooms and home programs. So I feel like I have feet kind of planted in two different academic realms. So hopefully I'll touch on both of them for you guys today. How many of you are K-12 teachers? It's two. Thanks, guys. And the rest of you are college teachers. Everything we're going to talk about, applicable in both settings. So I'm going to start off we're going to start off actually in 1968, which was a great year. President Johnson authorized the funding of a program called Project Follow Through. Who's heard of Project Follow Through? Anybody? Nobody. Well, cool. History lesson on top of academic lesson. So Project Follow Through was a large-scale educational program intended to extend Head Start. But Congress, in their infinite wisdom, cut funding by about $105 million. And instead of it being an academic program, it instead became a research program. So what happened is that they were planning on impacting students from low-income families from K through third grade to see if they could extend growth and improvement made in Head Start kids. And in fact, what they ended up doing was evaluating current educational practices to see which ones were most effective in improving academic gains in K through third graders from low-income families. So between 1968 and 1977, if you're a nerd like that, between 1968 and 1977, they collected oodles of data, and they found that one program, actually three, but really one program produced significant educational gains for kids. Does anybody want to guess what it might have been? What do you think? Oh, okay. Another guess? No, not that one either. Okay, well, I'll give you a hint. It actually started in Oregon. And I didn't even do that on purpose. I'm not kidding. Nothing? All right, so I'll tell you what it is. Direct instruction, which was developed by Siegfried Engelmann and colleagues, was the most effective program for increasing both academic gains as well as problem solving and self-esteem measures for kids K through third grade with low-income families. The factors or the components that make direct instruction effective are the ones we're going to talk about today, not so much Project Follow Through. So direct instruction components include capturing your learner's attention. And direct instruction lessons do this by literally requiring a student listening response. So they need to respond to a cue at the beginning of a lesson so that the teachers know they're ready to learn. They provide a brief overview or object of the lesson. The teacher models, and then the students have an opportunity to do guided practice. Sometimes that would be like, I do, you do, or I do, we do, kind of practice. And then the students practice on their own and rinse and repeat until the student masters the skills being addressed. So like I said, we're not going to talk so much about direct instruction per se, but why I think direct instruction worked. Remember, most effective program of all the ones evaluated. And it's because there are multiple opportunities to respond embedded in every lesson. And research has told us that opportunities to respond are highly correlated with student academic success, improved behavior in classrooms, and student enjoyment of the learning environment. So opportunities to respond is really what we're going to talk about. And there are four current, fairly modern ways to encourage or to provide opportunities for students to respond in classrooms. And I've got them here in order of least teacher effort to most teacher effort. That's important because, well, effort, right? So I'm going to talk about each of them, give you some examples, capture the highlights for all of them, and then you can talk to me about them later if you're interested. So choral responding is a method where teachers provide a cue and then students respond in unison vocally, chorally responding, to that student instruction or teacher directive. It's used for short answers, not complete sentences, short answers. Some benefits to choral instruction in classrooms are that students who are low achieving can respond without fear of failure, right? Because it's one short answer and everybody's doing it. Another benefit is that it encourages students with special needs to be able to be included and participate, especially in those K-12 classrooms, where sometimes teachers have a hard time including students with special needs in their lectures. It provides teachers with feedback because you can hear a wrong response in the midst of the right responses, right? So it provides you guys with feedback on how well the concepts you're talking about or teaching are being received by your students. So I've got a short little video, it's adorable, of some young kids learning how to do choral responding in a classroom.
Raise their hands. So when I ask a question, are you going to raise your hands? Yes, sir, everyone. No, unless I say, raise your hand. So everybody, raise your hand. Then you can do that. But here's what we're going to do instead. When the answers are very short, we're going to say the answers together. I'll ask a question. I will put up my hands. This says think, do not blurt. And when I lower my hands right there, you'll say the answer. Got it? Okay, ooh, good job sitting up. So get ready. So everybody, what day of the week is it? Everyone, it's?
November.
The day of the week is Friday. Oh, I can't believe you forget that. Let's try it again. So what day of the week is it? Think?
Friday.
Think? Everyone. Friday. Now let's practice that again. This is think. You don't say it until I lower my hands right there. Okay? So what day of the week is it, everybody? It's?
Friday.
All right. Of course, tomorrow it will be?
Saturday.
I didn't fool you. After Saturday?
Sunday.
Perfect. That gives everybody a chance to think. You are so good. Now,
All right, unless you think that it's only good for little kids, I have a nice video of it happening in a college classroom. This is actually adult learners.
When I go like this, you guys are good at answering. This is your cue, okay? True or false? Applied behavior analysis is for children with autism only.
false.
Applied behavior analysis is an evidence-based treatment for children with autism. True. Punishment needs to be rude or scold a child.
False.
Control is one function of behavior.
False.
Good. ABA.
All right, that was a shameless plug for ABA, in case you're interested. In a college classroom, I have used choral responding to make sure my students are awake. Sometimes I will throw out a question and with only 5 of them responding, then I know I've not captured their attention. So another benefit to teachers is that you're able to gauge how well you are engaging your students with choral responding opportunities. The next method we're going to talk about is response cards. And response cards, as you can see in this example, can be whiteboards where answers are written, but they can be any sign or card that students once again show in unison, given a teacher-directed instruction or prompt. Benefits to response cards are huge. I love response cards and have used them in my undergraduate classes for almost the entire time I've been teaching. This is an example, or these are kids in a high school math class, I think, providing responses to response cards, so it can be used in multiple settings. So response cards work because, once again, they provide frequent opportunities to respond. Every time I want to know if students are with me, I can prompt them to write an answer down and hold it up on their card. I can do true, false. I can do yes, no. I can do multiple choice types of responses on a response card. Here's an example. This would be, and this is how I used it, I would make this be an 8.5 by 11 laminated color page. The tea green would be on one side of the page and the false red would be on the other, so students could flip their answer. And then I can capture multiple choice by telling the students to turn it upside down or back and forth. I had these embedded in my student note packets. So they would go to the copy center, they'd pick up their guided notes for the course, they'd pay an extra $3, and they would get their response card, and then I could use it in my intro site questions, probably 10 to 15 times in a 50-minute lecture. I would provide them opportunities to respond. Once again, I know they're with me if they're responding. I'm checking to make sure that they're on track with me. I can check to see if they're correct or not, if they're getting the concept I'm talking about, and I'm keeping them attending to what I'm talking about instead of their phone or the computer. All of those are huge benefits. This is a picture, if you can tell, of individualized student icons. You use an app called Plickers, Plickers, and Plickers essentially will create for you, you'll print out these student unique shapes, and they can turn the shapes one way or another to indicate different answers, and you scan with your phone and you get data. So you know which students responded and whether they got it right. So it's a great way for you to see what's happening visually in your room, but also to collect data on how students are grasping the concepts you're talking about in class. I'm a major technophile. If it's cool and new, I probably want to check it out. There is Socrative, there is Go Soapbox, there are iClickers, all kinds of technology associated with quizzing and soliciting student responses during your lectures to make sure that they're with you. I'm going to tell you, as technologically friendly as I am, I like my red and green cards because I can look immediately and see. I don't have to go look at technology to find out if they're with me or not. I don't have to check it after class. I know immediately if the students are with me and if they're attending. Old school wins when it comes to response cards. Guided notes, third method for encouraging active student responding. Guided notes are instructor-prepared note packets for every lecture you give. So we're moving down the hierarchy, right? This is on the slightly more effortful end for teachers, but they provide so many benefits to you as a teacher and to your students. Some immediate benefits are students' note-taking is more accurate because you're providing the majority of information and they're only filling in the parts you want them to. It's more accurate, which means better quiz scores. Let me show you an example. In this example of guided notes from a graduate classroom on learning theory and teaching practices, you can see that this professor has a couple of different icons he's using. I can't figure out the laser, so I'm gonna have to point. So here, there's a little circle with an arrow in it. Here we got the little pointy finger. This one means, hey, you, do this later. And then there's another example where there's some underlined content. And essentially what they mean are, when you've got a circle with an arrow, it means, hey, there's a definition here or a concept to elaborate on. Use your own words. When there is underlined content, it means fill it in exactly. You're going to be matching what's on my slide to what you write down. And then when there's a little pointy finger, it means go home and think about this some more, practice it, come up with your own examples. And by doing this, I'm showing the students the content that I think is important because that's what I'm indicating is important in my notes. So increased accuracy, I'm able to show what's important. I talk fast. Did you guys notice that? I talk really fast. So I need my students to keep up with me. If they had to write down, and I don't know how many of you know this, but students really feel compelled to write down every single word you say or that's on a slide. I don't have time for that. I talk way too fast for that. So guided notes allows me to keep my classes moving at a pace that I'm comfortable with. So another benefit, if you're like me and you talk really fast or you have a lot of content to cover. Guided notes have been shown to be effective in college and secondary classrooms. Increased quiz scores are uniformly seen across all published studies. The last method we're going to talk about is inner teaching, which is currently my favorite method of increasing student engagement in the classroom. In inner teaching, I'm shifting the responsibility of preparation for the class from me to my students. How do you do that? It's awesome. So in inner teaching, essentially students have to prepare for each class with almost the same amount of effort that I would prepare for a class. The amount of time I would put into a lecture explaining concepts, students should be preparing for class by answering study questions on those concepts. So they're much more active learners when they get into the room because they've prepared for the class. Inner teaching has 5 components in research. The first is these prep guides. The rule of thumb is 8 to 12 questions per 60-ish minute class. And in your class period, you're going to have about 15 minutes dedicated to your instruction and about 45 minutes dedicated to student discussion. If your class is longer and you're covering more content, then you'll have more questions and more time dedicated to student discussion. The students fill out their discussion questions, their prep guides, bring them with them to class, and then once in class, we group them up. Students are divided into groups of, I like to do 2 or 3, depending on the class size. I try not to do more than that because there's almost always a student who likes to run the group and then nothing else happens. Nobody else gets to participate. So I keep my groups small, and in large classes, I assign them because invariably somebody won't have a partner and their feelings get hurt. So I just like to assign. It's up to you. As students are discussing, you as the instructor are walking around, you're mixing and mingling. You're prompting them to get back on task. You are asking them questions. You're presenting them an opportunity to ask you questions. Once the discussion period is over, students fill out a report. They synthesize the information they brought to the group with what they heard from peers and write a summary for you. And then they're prompted to ask you questions. I just didn't get this, or we couldn't come up with another example of that, right? And that's what you're going to use to base your lecture on. Your lecture can be at the end of class if you can do it on the fly. Sometimes if it's a small class, I'll just take all the papers and read through them real quick and answer questions right then and there. If it's a larger class or it's a more complex material, I'll actually do the lecture at the beginning of the next period, right? And I'll prepare some slides and some official examples. Either way, up to you. So those reports basically are what generates your lecture. And you're only lecturing on the stuff they didn't get versus the stuff that they might have gotten just from the readings. So it saves you potentially frustration. Inner teaching, once again, has resulted in higher quiz scores recently after class and toward the end of the term than traditional lecture classes have. So today, I'm not sure what the time is, but I hope that I've inspired you to look into some of these ways to promote active student responding and to increase opportunities to respond for your students, because that's been highly correlated with higher grades, more student satisfaction, and fewer disruptive behaviors in the classroom, all things we value. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, talk to me later. Thank you very much.